Chapter 272, Ultra-Precision Nano Dimension Diagram 1. The abilities of the School of General Senses were completely different from what Zutui had initially thought. Based on Zutui's current understanding of the School of General Senses, the School of General Senses was a small and complete supernatural department. It should be said that its abilities had completely surpassed the supernatural type. It could materialize everything it senses. The various abilities of the supernatural type could be materialized by the School of General Senses. The abilities of the School of Enlightened Mind seemed to be a little difficult, but the rest were not. The School of Radiation Influence was rather special. It affected the environment and the enemy through its own abilities. The initial source was hypnosis. It seemed a little difficult to materialize, but it seemed possible. Other than that, School of General Senses had all the abilities that the supernatural branch did not have, such as treatment, or a clone, and enlarge and shrink. When thought of this, Zutui suddenly thought of another usage of the materialization system. For example, Zutui could reduce the power of his opponent's fire-type superpower by a percentage when he fought with a fire-type superhuman. Even if it was reduced by 20% or even 10%, it would still be impressive. What if it could be weakened several times? Also, it could be enhanced. He could strengthen the attacks of his teammates. This thought made the corners of Zutui's mouth twitch. This is definitely the strongest support. If they were out on a team mission, the second and third year students would be crying and shouting as they approached Zutui. He would be a humanoid power amplifier. These were all things that Zutui could think of. But these were already very powerful. There was definitely a lot of potential in the School of General Senses. Zutui sensed that if he were to further subdivide the School of General Senses, he would be able to establish a School of Perception Instantiation. Suddenly, he thought of another problem. Mr. Ku, the School of General Senses can materialize everything they sense. Does that mean that as long as you can sense the original quantum frequency of a certain substance and have enough mind power, you can materialize it? Zutui asked. That's the theory, Kingshan said. Then computers, firearms, even cannons, and space-based weapons can be materialized too? In theory, there are infinite possibilities. According to the theory of our current perception instantiation system, any substance or image that really existed would have an original quantum frequency. However, based on our current research and cultivation experience, there is still a limit to the original quantum frequency that we can sense, Kingshan said. Limit? What kind of limits? Original, also known as origin. What was the origin? It was the origin of life, the origin of heaven and earth. To simplify it, all the characteristics or manifestations of natural features could slowly be sensed as long as one's perception of it reached a certain level. He could materialize the power represented by the original quantum frequency. For example, mountains. For example, rivers, lakes, and seas, or water. For example, the wind, rain, lightning, fire, flowers, trees, birds, and insects. As long as one put in enough effort, one would be able to sense the original quantum frequencies of these natural-born creatures. Thus, different levels of abilities could be used. However, everything was limited to natural growth. In layman terms, it was nature. In simpler terms, you will be able to sense the original quantum frequency of all lives or phenomena that have not been artificially interfered with, Kingshan said. All lives or phenomena that were not artificially interfered with. Mr. Ku, can you give me an example? Take plants for example. If you sense the vine grass ability to grow the vines, you can influence and control them for your own use. However, any seeds that had undergone genetic changes were a variety of genetically modified plants. One could not sense their original quantum frequencies. Perhaps these genetically modified plants did not have the original quantum frequency. For example, cement, ceramic tiles, plastic, and other compounds cannot be sensed at their original quantum frequencies. I understand. Zutui truly understood. The general distinction was between man-made and non-man-made products. The difference was that a real mountain of soil or stone actually had its original quantum frequency. However, artificial mountains or mountains that were artificially built did not have such original quantum frequencies. He could not sense it. What do you think? How about the School of General Senses? Ku Qingshan spent a long time trying to convince Zhu Tui to choose the School of General Senses. Ku Qingshan had been a step too late back then. He did not manage to pull Zhu Tui into the School of General Senses. Ku Qingshan felt extremely regretful. He could not let Zhu Tui off the hook this time. It's very powerful, but Mr. Ku, why is the School of General Senses so weak? Not to mention the first-year Longhu list, even the second-year Longhu list doesn't have anyone on it. Zhu Tui carefully recalled and asked, it doesn't seem like anyone has made it onto the Longhu overall rankings. Ku Qingshan touched his shiny forehead and felt a little awkward. First of all, we have very few people in the School of General Senses. In fact, we have even fewer people than the School of Enlightened Mind. That's not right, Mr. Ku. There are only a dozen or so students in the School of Enlightened Mind this year. There are more than 70 freshmen in the School of General Senses, right? They were divided into 2 classes. That's the Mental Perception Division. It's considered a prerequisite for the students who choose the School of General Senses. I can tell you very clearly. There are only 13 students in the School of General Senses from the first year to the 4th year, Ku Qingshan said.